Welcome. This is the Health and Wellness Coach Journal podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Singh, the founder and CEO of the Center for Health and Wellness Coaches. This is a podcast for coaches to explore topics related to health, wellness, and coaching, sharing knowledge and sharing light. I have the pleasure of interviewing Susan Ezra. Her passion has always been to ignite the healing potential within an individual through the body and mind. For more than 30 years, Susan has been teaching individual clients and healthcare professionals to use the power of imagery for health and healing. Currently, Susan is core faculty at Wisdom of the Whole Coaching Academy. Previously, she served as faculty member for the Academy for Guided Imagery. She is certified in integrative guided imagery and holds coaching certifications through the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation, the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching, and the International Coaching Federation. Susan has also dedicated many years of her life as a nurse. It's a pleasure to be here today with you, especially to discuss imagery and how it applies to coaching.
It's wonderful to be with you, Jessica. Coaching and imagery really are like two fingers on the hand. They just go so beautifully together. We use imagery all the time, and I'm sure coaches use imagery more than they're even aware of.
It's so ingrained, like you're saying, in just our everyday language and everyday communication that we're not even aware that we're doing it often, right? And so having that awareness of what we're doing then allows us to really change the effectiveness of how we use imagery.
Indeed.
It's also a nice way, I find, so often with education and with our jobs, we're always in this mental state, this logical thinking mind. And so imagery is just such a beautiful way of accessing multiple dimensions of being and knowing.
Yeah, in truth, imagery is really a way of knowing. We know about the intellect. We definitely are in the mental plane, and we need to use that. We need to rely on those skills and those capabilities from the mental level. And I think all of us who are coaches and most of us in the world know about the way of knowing from our intuition, from our inner knowing, from that deeper level. And I've really come to find that imagery is another way of knowing. It's one of the three I's: intellect, intuition, and imagery. And it really is a very powerful way of knowing and untapped to its maximum potential in most people in the world.
I love that part of what you said, too, of most people in the world, because it's universal, right? It's a way of every language, every culture across the globe. It's who we are. It's the humanity, which is so important, especially nowadays for coaches, because there's so much technology, especially artificial intelligence keeps growing and growing. And, having just that human connection, which is one of the most powerful aspects of coaching, and really just on top of that, having the imagery experience with it is just so beautiful and powerful and a deeper way of connecting.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that they don't use their imagination, or they're not visual, or they don't visualize. And there is much to be said, probably broader than we can get into depth in our conversation, but there's much to be said about how everyone can and does use the imagination, because it's just the way the right brain conceptualizes and thinks. So everybody has to be able to imagine. It's just what the right brain does, except most of us are left brain dominant, so we're more focused on those capacities.
That's why I'm so grateful to have this conversation with you today, so that we can have this conversation, share it with our fellow coach colleagues on the use of imagery and how we use imagery to be more aware of it and how effective and powerful it is for coaches. You've dedicated your whole life. You have so much education and experience in these holistic health and healing modalities, especially with imagery and coaching. How did you get introduced to imagery?
I started way back in 1990, so I've been practicing since then. And I got introduced through the Academy for Guided Imagery, and Dr. Marty Rossman and Dr. David Bressler were the pioneers and creators of that training and really brought imagery, they call it interactive guided imagery, to the forefront of mind body medicine and healthcare. I leaped onto that train in 1990 and been on it ever since. And I went through the training, went on to be trained as one of their teachers. And then with my dear friend and fellow founder and teacher, Terry Reed, we went on to develop our own training program in what we call integrative imagery, which is very similar. And then taught that for 13 years and still continue to teach it in different formats, a different way now, but still very big in my life. And then folding it into coaching and using it in the moment or using it with some more formal techniques. There's probably, 15 to 18 different integrative imagery techniques we have that could be brought into coaching to enhance and to broaden the dimension of the coaching topic and the way the client might want to use it to change or to have something happen in their life. So we can fold it into coaching really pretty seamlessly just in a coaching conversation in a session, and or we can actually bring in a particular imagery technique to use in a session.
What a journey. It's such a rare gift to be able to even have this conversation with someone like you, because I've done that training from, as you know, from the Academy of Guided Imagery in 2020, so almost 30 years after you had done it. I know you were in the initial pioneer group, and it was just for anyone's own personal healing. There's so much wisdom that just comes, and often you don't know how to access it. And imagery is such a powerful tool. But then what's even more rare about having this conversation or knowing people like you, which are few and far between, is it's not so common to find someone with 30 years of interactive or integrative guided imagery experience. You know, there's guided imagery. I know we'll discuss the differences, but to actually interact with the images that are consciousness forms, that's why I feel like it's just such a gift to be taught and to have this conversation with you and to learn from you. So thank you again for sharing.
Sure. It'd probably be good to bring in an actual example here of what we're talking about. And a very wonderful technique and a very easily adaptable technique into coaching is the inner wisdom, the inner wise part of the self. And we can use that a lot in, again, coaching conversation as far as, what's the knowing part within you, say, or what's your gut have to share. And then using the inner wisdom technique is much more formal, but it's really simply tapping into and interacting with and listening and communicating with that wise part of ourself that does know what is the best for oneself. And only that wise self can know that the most. And imagery, similar to the external coaching conversation, I guess imagery is really just an internal conversation. And the wise part of ourself will always guide us, will always lead us, and is always there. So this is a way of actually being with actively that wise part of the self. Hope that explains it in a little more real way.
Yeah, and just building on that, I'm wondering if anything comes to mind. You talked about concretely what is that inner wisdom with the use of imagery. Does anything come to mind from your coaching practices all these years of an example of something like that?
There's so many, it's hard to pick one out. But what that speaks to is that in the type of integrative imagery in the style that I do, we actually invite the client to bring an image to mind that represents the wise part of themselves. And that image, Jessica, as you know, because you've used this, can come in any shape, size, form, any way as a person, an animal, a cloud. Water's really strong to me, so often my wisdom will come in the form of something in the natural world. It sometimes comes as that soft voice, that quiet inner voice that they talk about. And sometimes it just comes as like, oh, information, like, oh, a message. But I will also say, in all of my years of experience, over 30 years, I'm continually astounded by what the image comes for the person, in what form, and then what happens. And it's not me giving somebody an image or doing anything with the image. It's really the person coming up and their imagination coming up with the image. And then it's just off and running. So in the past, I've had a red-tailed hawk as my wisdom figure. And to this day, I still see hawks out, flying. Or my dear friend Terry's inner wisdom is a macaw, the beautiful, all the colored macaw. And he's quite a character, and he's funny, and he teaches by doing things. He doesn't talk. Spiritual figures, animals, just one person's wisdom to help her heal through a shoulder injury came as a little green inchworm. And that little green inchworm helped her heal her shoulder. So the imagination is infinite.
And like you said, it can take any form. Because I know with the images themselves, like you had mentioned, and just imagery in general being any sensory perception, any way we can perceive our external world and relate within. And so it's a nice way of really enhancing that universality component of the imagery. And it's also amazing, when you talk about that inchworm for healing, or I also remember I was coaching with somebody who was really trying to become pregnant, and they were told that it wasn't going to be easy for them by a healthcare provider. And she had an image of herself with 2 children, and a lot of wonderful things came to her, but just the shift in feeling. So, we have these images and whatever messages that come to us, but our body responds very strong and very real, right? And that has also been proven by science, the science behind imagery.
So what you're saying, Jessica, is also part of the multidimensionality of, so we have our intellect, our imagination, and we have our internal intuition. And we have the connection of the mind and the body, the spirit, and what is greater than ourselves. That's all connected and accessed through the imagination. And yeah, what the mind thinks, what we feel, and what we imagine is experienced in the body. So there's whole body mind medicine right there.
And the fancy term for that, right? I remember learning from your class the psychoneuroimmunology behind all of this.
Indeed. Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing because when we're stressed, it's that fight or flight, right? Whether it's a work stress or we perceive a threat, and our body has the same physiological response as if we were out in a jungle or if there was a very life-threatening threat nearby us. And just as similarly as powerful with imagery, all of that can be used for growth and for healing.
For sure. So imagery, when we worry, when we're anxious, when we're afraid, when we're stressed, it's the same process as when we focus on the positive, or we empower ourselves, or we access those more strong, positive emotions. The body responds and has a physiological effect. So, yeah, we can all use our imagination to shift from the stress state, because there's no doubt there's a lot of stress for everybody and in the world, to a positive mental, emotional, and physical state in really a very short period of time.
Which is also one of the amazing benefits. And I think imagery still is a unique skill set, because even though coaches have it and we use it, how many are trained to really have it effectively there and really utilize its power to really have that shift. And if you think about the coaching relationship in general, when we first start working with clients to where they are at the end of our coaching relationship, Or the shift in between each individual session, like you had mentioned, imagery is just a really powerful way to deepen that shift.
Yes, and you really can use imagery in the moment in a coaching session. And a few different ways you can do that is listening, because we all use deep listening, active listening in our coaching. And when we're hearing somebody speak in a metaphor or an image, I feel like I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. That's imagery. And then you can simply engage at that point with them and ask them, okay, so what needs to happen there with that weight? And again, off one goes. As well as when somebody's talking about an issue or conflict or difficulty or a symptom or anything in the coaching, you as the coach can just ask them, so what's an image that represents what you're experiencing right now? And I'll tell you an example of that. Client told me a long time ago, but I'm still remembering it so vividly. She was having a very difficult time in her life. And I asked her what image was that could describe that. And she said, I feel like a raw egg without a shell. And so I asked her, what does that raw egg need? And she built a little corral, kind of a little protective container for that raw egg to be in and to come together to have some containment and support.
It just grounds you with coaching. It's the client that always drives the conversation, and it's based on their agenda, right? Where the person needs to go. And there's no way for us to predict that. And it's exactly what imagery teaches us, that all this knowledge and knowing, never in my wildest dreams would I come up with that image of a raw egg as my own metaphor with somebody. But that's what they needed. And that was the wisdom that was coming for them. And they got the shift from it. And so, what you're mentioning is there's so many ways in a coaching conversation to ask questions to either enhance a client's awareness of imagery or to evoke an image of maybe what might represent something for the client, for whoever we're talking to, whether it's imagery or in coaching. So, the difference again being these questions are more interactive on the spot. Guided imagery, as many people have experienced, is like you listen to an imagery meditation and allow images to form. But this interactive guided imagery, what you've been working on, and integrative imagery as well, that's really different, unique, and special because it's really getting to know the unique images a person has at a much deeper level and exploring them in a space that we may not even know it's like safe to even explore them. It's okay to have these conversations and access our wisdom this way.
Very true. Yes. And the reason why this is so powerful is because a personal image is relevant and meaningful to the person. And an image contains the energy and the essence that it represents. So that is really deep. And that's where working with images can help people change and transform really almost anything.
So powerfully said. And that's why, it's one thing that we use it in language. Everyone has this innate ability, right? To use imagery, we use imagery. But for coaches, imagery is such a gift of a skill to spend the time and spend more effort learning about it and how to really understand how to use it more and more as a coach to help with that transformation with their clients.
That's where formal training and practice comes in, for sure.
And especially with anyone with trauma or anyone who, it's important for us, just as coaches, we have to know our scope of practice and create that safe space. And this is exactly the same thing.
Yes.
Well, thank you for this beautiful overview of imagery. And for coaches, why is it so important for coaches to have this awareness? And I know to close our conversation today, we're so thrilled to experience this, but I know, Susan, you wanted to offer a brief guided imagery in closing.
And I'll just define when we say guided imagery. So that's usually where one is offering and is one direction that I'm offering some suggestions in the form of some imagery. And so there's lots of wonderful application for guided imagery in itself. And when we're in a group or when we're in this kind of internet environment, guided imagery really is suited best. So I'll just offer this, and it's a way of giving you a little gift of just a few minutes of an imagery experience. So go ahead and get comfortable. And if you want, you can have your eyes open, you can gaze softly downward, or you can let your eyes just gently close. And then just breathe into your whole body, allowing each breath to relax you a little bit more. And just enjoy this time within, and this time to focus on yourself and on three parts of yourself. So just bring your attention to your belly, to your abdomen. And as you breathe in and out from here, feel that sense of being grounded in your body. And an image that might fit to represent this area is the mountain. If you like, just imagine a mountain and connect that with that feeling of being grounded in your body. Breathing in and out through the belly. And then keep that image and whatever feeling you have in your body, and bring your attention to your heart center. And just breathe in and out through the heart center for a few moments. And focus on being centered in your heart. And the image here could be a beautiful, calm ocean. You might even be able to see the color or just feel the calm of the ocean. And here in the heart, the ocean is calm, vast, and deep. Being centered in the ocean of calm within yourself. And then keep that and let your attention float up to the mind. Being clear and focused in your mind. Being steady. Being open. And the image here could be like the vast blue sky. Really spacious. Calm. Clear. Open with possibilities and infinite potential. So keep that with you and combine now all three: the vast sky of the mind, the calm, open ocean of the heart, and the grounded mountain in the body. Carry that with you if you like. Return to it whenever you like. It's a part of you now. And then with a couple full breaths, just go ahead and let your eyes float open if they're closed. Feeling refreshed. And carry on.
That was so beautiful. Thank you.
You are welcome.
You know, for those moments with imagery, it's like you can access any place in the world, in this world that's not in this world, and have this beautiful expansion. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know we had mentioned some examples of how we could apply imagery to coaching and how we do apply it. And for anyone who's interested in reading more, Susan Ezra wrote a book with her partner and co-founder of Beyond Ordinary Nursing a while ago called Guided Imagery and Beyond, Stories of Healing and Transformation. And so for anyone who is interested in learning more stories about healing journeys and just transformations with the use of integrative imagery, the dialogue with imagery, highly recommend this book.
It's a storybook. It's all full of lots of stories of healing and transformation. You can get it through Amazon.
I'm still in this vast sky, vast ocean mindset. And so with that, I really want to say thank you for sharing this gift of imagery, this knowledge and light, and sharing that beautiful practical experience with everyone. And one of my takeaways from this conversation is just how human imagery can be and how transforming it is to really have a shift and open us up while grounding us into ourselves. And so I am so grateful to you and for all of your work. It's a pleasure speaking with you.
That's beautifully said. And I am also very grateful for our conversation and for sharing this with others.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you and value your feedback. So please subscribe and write a constructive review. If you'd like to be informed of new episodes and offerings and resources for coaches, sign up for our email list at www.centerforhealthandwellnesscoaches.com. Sending you warmth and light.